Welcome to the Cabincast, your Getaway Primer.
The Cabincast is brought to you by Roughing It in Style. Roughing It in Style's family business was created to supply folks like you with unique furnishings that fit homes where memories are made. And like these memories, their handmade furniture and decor is made to last. They emphasize creative innovation in interior design, cabinet design, and custom furniture. Their designers are available to help you create spaces that are warm, inviting, and fit your unique style. There are 2 locations, one in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, in Harshaw, 10 miles south of Minocqua, and one out west in Fort Collins, Colorado. Find out more today at roughingItinstyle.com. Hello.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I always look forward to our Tuesday night recordings of the Cabincast.
I do as well.
It's fun to get prepared for it and see who we're going to interview and to kind of read through some of the feedback we've been getting from our listeners. That's been the best part.
Yeah, the feedback has been phenomenal. So first off, a huge thank you to everyone who's followed up with reviews and sending lots of letters and different things that we've been having a lot of fun reading with your traditions. And we're going to share some of our listeners' letters today.
Yep. I had a few that really stuck out to me that I wanted to share because I knew it would give our readers some ideas. We had one from Laura that said, "Hi, Kristen and Eric. I have loved listening to your Cabincast. We have owned a cabin on a beautiful piece of water in northwestern Montana for the last 8 years, and it is my favorite place to be. As soon as I open the door and smell the old logs and pine smell, every ounce of my body starts to relax. We love hosting friends and having our large family spend time with us at the cabin. You recently asked how people keep a record of something along those lines regarding welcoming friends to your cabin. We have a very cool and very old vintage scrapbook with a lake scene on the front and mountains in the background, and I love being able to look through that and see all of the comments that our friends have made over the years. Another fun thing that we do is we have a big wall with coat hooks right inside our front door. We have it filled with flannel shirts, and as our guests enter, we ask them to pick a flannel for the weekend. It is theirs to use during their time with us. It's fun to see which flannel they choose, and it is often hard for them to leave without their flannel. We have every size from newborn up to men's double XL. I'm always on the lookout for flannels at secondhand shops, and it's a great way to welcome guests to our cabin. Thank you so much for your podcast. I'm enjoying every minute of it." Isn't that fun?
Yeah, I love that. I love the flannel.
I know. I want to go and stay, and so I can pick out a flannel.
I know, absolutely. And I can imagine just the pictures they take and how people, campfire flannels, the whole deal. I've never heard of anything like that, actually.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's so fun is to share these ideas, to get them for ourselves and then to share them with our listeners. So I know we're going to keep getting more of them too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got another one. A lot of people had great feedback on episode 6. Chasing sunsets. We talked a lot about road trips and it sparked a lot of great memories from people. This one is from Carolyn. "Hi, Kristen and Eric. Enjoyed another start to my Saturday with listening to number 6 podcast. Catherine was an interesting guest and I enjoyed hearing her water story. Those were great memories you shared of family road trips. My only sibling is my sister, who is 9 years older. So most of my memories of trips are just being with my parents and visiting in-state relatives. We sang a lot. Old songs I'm sure you've never heard." I bet we have, though. "And played the license plate game. Our Indiana plates used to start out with the alphabetical number of the county. That was sure a good way for me to learn my counties. I also remember playing travel bingo with those green cardboard cards with the sliding transparent orange windows. Very retro. A few years back, they appeared in retail stores again. I have to say, too, I was so surprised to hear Eric relay the story of the cabin in Westfield. That is a suburb due north of where I live in Carmel, Indiana." And what's really cool is Carolyn offered to go and scout out that cabin and get the scoop for us on what's happening.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Keep up with the news story.
Yeah, hopefully she'll snap a couple of photos and we'll be able to share them with everybody.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
So it's great. I mean, we have a letter from Indiana, a letter from Montana. We have a letter from Idaho, Chicago, Wisconsin, all over the place.
Yeah.
I feel like we should have a map here on the wall and keep.
I think that may be something we need to add.
Right?
Start pinning.
Yeah, and see where everybody's from. I loved playing bingo in the car on my road trips too. I don't know if you ever did that. Have you seen those retro green cards that you slide over?
Yes. I think our kids played with those for a little while. I think they're a little young right now to understand, so they were just trying to probably pull the little slider completely off.
Yeah, they thought that was the game.
Yeah,
like which one could get the most off?
Who can wreck this fastest?
It's like a tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, they play that game every day though. So
how much can they rip apart?
yeah. This morning, I was working on the deck, and my littlest guy, Magnus, was watching me from all the different windows. And as I walked by, I was just ready to put a board in the table. So I look over, and he's writing on our window with a piece of string cheese. So he had almost covered the entire lower window with string cheese. And at first I thought, really panicked, that he was smushing it into the screen of the window. And then I was like knocking on the window because we had the front door locked, so he couldn't escape with the deadbolt because Sam was inside. And I knocked on it, and she came around the corner, and just, the normal look on your face when your kid does something like that. But yeah, it's the little string cheese smear on the window. It looks nice. It's like kind of a little less classy than stained glass, but somewhere in between. So.
Yeah. Maybe if you like handprints on the window, but you guys have string cheese on the window.
Yeah. So
only in Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we clean our windows with string cheese in Wisconsin.
And probably Sam coming around the corner was just glad it was string cheese.
Yeah, I could have been worse. That's true. He could have had like a rock or something.
Right. Oh my goodness. Kids.
Yeah.
Another one came from a follower that is living in Idaho now, but she has memories of driving back and forth from Chicago area. I was listening to your podcast today on chasing sunsets, and it brought back so many memories driving from Chicago to Eagle River, where we stayed at my aunt's cabin at Schrader's Haven. We had 5 kids in a sedan with my parents. It was a great drive. My dad put a piece of plywood over the feet wells in the back seat so we could play. No seat belts at that time either. The coveted spot was the back dashboard, where the back window meets the back seat dashboard. Anyway, we were all young, and it was a great place for one of us to take a nap. I love that memory. Great podcast. I do think that's one of the things people love most is the memories that they get hearing these stories.
Oh yeah. It brings up though. Yeah. It takes me back every time we talk about these, and you spend so much time with your, especially siblings or even by yourself, just in the cars. And it's funny how indelible it makes an imprint on your mind, where those are almost, if not probably equal to the memory of the actual vacation and the things you're doing. But you spend so much time thinking and spending time together and talking. And I was listening to another podcast a couple days ago, and they were talking about how songs on the radio sound so much more. There's something about hearing a song on the radio that they can't just change. You don't have control over it. Right. It would just come on the station, and it just sounds so much more fun and exciting. Like it just arrived out of the ethers, and now you get to listen to this cool song, and you're not like, oh, I'm not really quite feeling this. You really get into it in kind of a different way, but now with full control over your playlist, even with the satellite radios with 300 stations. I mean, a lot of times it's, this is the station we're listening to. It's the only one available, especially in, the Northwoods. And something about having a song that you do love come on, and not being able to change it. That's kind of special.
I think too, listening to everything as a family.
Yes.
Not everybody with their own earbuds in and listening to their own things.
Yeah.
Where you have to take turns and listen.
Yeah. And I don't think you get you're right. You don't get that quite as much anymore.
Yeah.
You'd have your parents say, is that you call this music?
Right.
You don't hear that quite as much when everyone has their separate set of headphones.
We took a road trip to Cape Cod when I was in high school. And I remember my sister, all she wanted to listen to was Wilson Phillips the whole way. And then you did want to have your own headphones. Yeah. So you could switch it to what you wanted to. But yeah, everybody had to take a turn, or like we would do the George Strait I shared one time all the way to Colorado. And then every time you hear that song, you go straight back in the car, having those memories.
Yeah, and I think one of the lost arts too is mixtapes. I mean,
my gosh.
people make
Yes.
playlists now, but mixtapes used to be such a romantic gesture when you were dating someone. And
Yes.
I mean, in high school, we would make tapes, cassette tapes for each other. I mean, you'd burn them off CDs or just take them, like if someone had a tape-to-tape player, and then you'd record them and pass them around. And it was such a cool way. You felt a little bit like, oh, I'm, making my own playlist, part DJ, part pirate, music pirate.
Yeah.
And man, if you make a good mixtape, you'd be like, oh, this is going to win her over for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It did. Brian made me one in college, and it did. It won me.
Oh, it works.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So really fun to hear all of our listeners' memories. I hope you guys continue to send those in to us, because we sure love reading them and getting ideas. So we'll keep gathering those together. And thanks for all the people that have shared us with their friends and family members too, to help our listenership continue to grow. That's been great. Speaking of songs and making up playlists, Eric and I have Spotify playlists for the Cabincast that you guys can subscribe to and listen to. And I have a new song to add to it and a new artist that I'm loving.
All right.
This is Mike Murray.
And which playlist is this going to be on?
Let's put it on Road Trip.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. You can see after you hear it, you can let me know what you think. This song is called Tumbleweed by Mike Murray. Mike Murray is a Montana singer-songwriter with a voice that is honest, direct, and embodies the pureness of a classic folk storyteller. His music carries a message of camaraderie and empathy while drawing inspiration from his adventurous life experiences. His tales are all his own, but somehow the way he tells them, we can all find ourselves in his words. I mean, just hearing that, you're going to like the song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it matches really well with the sound. I hadn't heard of Mike Murray, and yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah. So I first heard it on an Instagram post from Whitefish Mountain Resort in Whitefish, Montana. And that's where Mike lives, out in Kalispell. So he's performed at the Continent Guitar Festival in Big Fork, Montana. And I'm just really excited to find this new artist.
Yeah, me too. I will be downloading all his stuff.
All right.
All right. Here is Tumbleweed by Mike Murray. I love it.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, that's great. So that is a perfect road trip song.
Isn't it?
Yeah, just tumbleweed, tumbling down the road.
Yeah, the words are great. The beat is great. Like, I can't even stay still sitting right here in the chair. I'm just moving around because it gets you excited and happy and just fun.
Yeah, and it's funny, in the Midwest here, we don't get a lot of tumbleweeds.
Yeah.
And I think of them as like a really Western thing, like a Western movie, John Wayne, high noon, it rolls through the middle of a gunfight thing. The few years ago, I was in, this would have been Kansas, bow hunting. And it was kind of a rough hunt because we were hunting kind of the edge of a farmer's field, and the cows got out of a neighboring farm, and I was basically surrounded by cows, which makes it tough to deer hunt. And then the ranchers that lost the cows found out about it, so they came to herd them up on their four-wheelers and carts. So I'm pretty sure it just spooked the deer out of the whole area. And I'm sitting there, and the cows are gone, the farmers are gone. It'd been an hour. There's no squirrels, there's no birds. It was just like a ruckus. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, out of like a ditch, it was like an embankment and a ditch, a tumbleweed just popped up and just rolled across the field in front of me.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, first of all, that's cool, because I hadn't really seen a tumbleweed in the wild. It's like the elusive tumbleweed. Like
it sounds like it's a live creature, the way
like
you describe it.
Yeah, like this elusive tumbleweed just escaping from its clutches in the brush, and it just rolled across. I don't think I saw anything else the rest of that evening hunt, but I think I took some photos at some point of this, or the little video of the tumbleweed going across.
Your first tumbleweed encounter.
My first in the wild. I felt like it should be one of those, British, and we see the elusive tumbleweed in its natural habitat.
I wondered where that story was going to go when you were talking about the cows, and then here comes the tumbleweed.
Yeah. So
if you can find that video, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think I should be able to share that. I think I know where that is.
We have to put it to some good Western music
or
too.
this Tumbleweed. Yeah, we should
song
put
too.
that to Tumbleweed.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think it's a great song too. I can just picture like enjoying surfing. Like my family loves to wake surf behind the boat.
Yep.
It would be a great song to do that too.
It would. Absolutely. Yeah. So check out Mike Murray's stuff. He's got a ton of great songs from the little bit that I've pushed through and listened to. So yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, great.
So when I'm doing some research and I like reading old magazines, we've talked about that before. One of the things we haven't really talked about are people that have their getaways on the ocean, right? We talk about lakes and cabins and kind of the Northwoods a lot, but there's some things that I think people deal with beaches and oceans in a general sense, especially when you're taking a boat out, that we don't really deal with. We're not like, oh, how's the tide on the lake, right? It's like sometimes the lakes go up and down based on the water levels, but you don't really have to worry about tides. And I read this article. It's called Handling a Rowing Skiff. It's basically a directive on how to row a boat. And I was laughing at first, even at the premise of the article, because the idea of having trouble rowing a rowboat doesn't make sense to me. Have you had trouble rowing a rowboat before?
I don't think I've had trouble rowing it, but I do feel like I have to kind of practice.
Right. To get the pattern down.
Yeah. In a rowboat, it's so different than being in a canoe or, I'm sitting here doing it like people can see me. I'm practicing rowing.
Yeah, but you're doing the canoe paddle motions. I think the rowboat's with the two.
Yeah, I had to practice to get the hang of it.
Okay, so like it's getting the motion down. Well, this article is really interesting. It's from 1910, and it goes through all the forms of the rowboat, which we'll share some of these photos on our Instagram page once this podcast launches. But he actually gets into it. It sounds like he's dealing with rowing a rowboat on the ocean. And there I can absolutely see issues because you're dealing with waves and tides and a lot more factors, probably wind and different things where you could get into major trouble. So I'm going to read a little portion of this. So this is Handling a Rowing Skiff. It's by L. DeBrida Handley. You may have heard of him. He's a renowned water polo writer from 1910. You've probably read plenty of his articles. So,
yes, my bedside table is stacked.
Yeah, he's the J.K. Rowling of water polo writings in the early 1910s. So I will read this article. To the majority of people, it will hardly occur that there is a right and a wrong way about so simple a matter as knocking around in an old rowboat. But there undoubtedly is. And what is more, the knowledge of how to properly handle a small boat will not only increase one's pleasure in using it, but will also add to one's safety and may possibly avoid serious accidents. Among those who use rowboats, the uninitiated outnumber the expert by a wide margin. How green are many who venture out fearlessly into any kind of old tub, was brought home rather forcibly to the writer one afternoon last summer. The excessive heat in town had driven swarms of sweltering people to the shore, and every available cockle had been pressed into service. All morning the air was breathless, the water mirror-like, and many rowing parties wandered away from the harbors along the north shore of Long Island Sound, unaware that it was the tide that carried them out and that their rowing would never be able to take them back. In the afternoon, an unexpected land breeze arose, and the pleasure seekers suddenly realized that they were being blown a lot further from home than they wanted to go. It was just a brisk wind that had any fairly experienced oarsman would have overcome without any difficulty. But badly trimmed boats and poor rowing made it insurmountable to 9/10 of those rowing parties. Had not a few good Samaritans gone to the rescue with sailing and motorboats, many venturesome boatload would not have reached port that night. Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting. There's a couple things. One of them is just how they write in 1910 and some of the terms and the, flow of the language. And
yeah, it's a little hard to read, even when of course I read through it a few times, but to get the flow down of how they speak, it's beautiful writing, but their sentences start in a way, and end in a way that's a little unexpected.
Right. And I don't know if what did they say, that everyone grabbed their cockle of boats? Or
Yeah, I think a cockle is a type of rowboat, I
Okay.
believe. So what is it? The excessive heat in town had driven swarms of sweltering people to the shore, and every available cockle had been pressed into service. So they basically got every single boat available to go out on the water. And then it sounds like
cool
about
off.
90% of them got washed out to the ocean when they were going with the tide, out with the tide, and the tide was still receding when they wanted to go back in. So they had to gather up the people with sailboats and motorboats to collect everyone.
And not call from their cell phone to get help.
Yeah, there's not a lot you can do. Could you just imagine? Right? Even if it was 9 boats just like slowly drifting out to sea.
Right.
Yeah, it turns into like, oh, it's a nice afternoon into kind of an emergency.
Goodness. Have you ever had a boating emergency yourself?
I haven't. I have not had anything major. The only thing I can think of, we went kayaking up on Lake Superior, and Lake Superior is pretty well known for having these storms just blow up out of nowhere. And we were in tandem kayaks with 2 people. Yeah. So I was with a stranger, a lady, a super nice lady, a school teacher, and the storm blew up. We were supposed to go out to, I think, the Painted Rocks is a really pretty area up in Superior. And this storm blew up. We didn't make it out of the bay, and we started to try and turn back. But I mean, it was whitecaps out there, and we were really close to shore. And you're supposed to go into the waves so that you're cutting into them instead of letting them push against the side of your boat and push you into shore. And she was having a panic attack and was she's like, no, we have to go against the waves. And the waves were washing over the top of our boat. And at some point we just got pushed into the rocks. And luckily you could climb out of the kayak, stand up, and kind of get pointed in the right direction. But it got a little dicey. And then my brother and my friend Zach were just having a great time. Just like 2 guys, just like paddling circles around us and having fun. And like, what are you guys having any problems for? I'm like, well, I have someone that's paddling against me. She's kind of panicking. So,
right.
Yeah. But that wasn't really an emergency. I don't think we were ever in danger, but I can see how that happens.
Right. If you get that panicked, just in that situation, if it got a little worse, yeah, it would be easy.
Yeah, or if we had gotten out further before the storm hit and got caught. And, I definitely wasn't an experienced kayaker, but the idea of these people out in their rowboats for a beautiful day, and then the tide starts to pull them out to the ocean.
Right.
To the point where this guy wrote an entire article about how to row a boat correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just probably walking around the beach handing out copies of this article to people.
How to row your boat.
Yeah. So, but all good stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I had a sailboat capsize and turtle under. I was at summer camp and I took sailing lessons. You could pick like 3 activities, and I decided, because my dad was a sailor and a lot of his family members had been, so I was going to learn to be a sailor too. And it was really scary. My friend and I were on a little, maybe they were a sunfish or something, some little sailboat at camp. And it was our day to go out on our own. And we got in this area where all these dead trees were. So we couldn't get out of all these trees. And then our boat tipped over and we couldn't get it back up because the sail went underneath us.
And got caught on the trees
and caught on the trees. And then you could feel the trees under your feet.
Oh,
so I was panicking a little bit. I was freaked out. So they came and rescued us. I'm sure it wasn't a very big deal, and we weren't probably that far out. But when what your memory makes it when you're young.
So you were underneath the boat?
I wasn't under. We were kind of trying to pull ourselves up on.
Oh, on top of it.
We were kind of hanging on to it. Sure. But our feet were dangling under in the trees, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's no fun.
Yeah, no fun.
That actually reminds me of one more story about a maritime disaster. So we went with a group of friends to Mexico to an all-inclusive resort years ago. It was probably only maybe 2 years after we were married. And we went out on a catamaran, or we were trying to go out on a catamaran. And it was a pretty windy day. And we, climb aboard the catamaran, all get set up, get our Coronas and our cocktails, and the voice over the loudspeaker says, everyone needs to sit down and hang on. There's pretty good waves outside the entrance to the port or the bay, and it might be a little rough as we go out. Well, he had just finished saying that when we were arriving to this, and the boat swelled up on the front, and I was sitting on one of those mesh nets that pulls across the two, I don't know if they call them pontoons or what they call them on a catamaran. And I was sitting right by the main mast, and the boat kind of rose up in the front, and then you'd look down and there was nothing but like a withdrawal of water
racing.
And the boat slammed down and threw everybody forward. Well, I reached for the mast, and my wedding ring got caught on like a bolt or a nut. Well, it'd be a bolt on the mast. And that's what stopped me from flinging off onto the boat. So it cut me almost down to the bone from my wedding ring across, which hurt. But the problem was, all of a sudden, when you get a major cut on your ring finger, it starts swelling with blood. So I couldn't get my ring off as it was cut. And I'm in Mexico and maybe questioning some of the medical situation on this boat. And the captain, it was so wavy out, he immediately turned the boat around and went right back into the harbor. So I walked down and talked to one of the, I don't know if they're sailors or what they call them on the catamaran. And he said, oh, yes, that's why you should never get married. was his first. I'm like, oh, that's why. They told me before I got married that
you might get hurt.
Yeah, might get hurt on a catamaran in Mexico. And we poured soap all over my finger and kind of wrenched my ring off. And I still have a pretty good scar there, but I couldn't wear my ring for maybe 3 or 4 months while my finger healed. But right after that, we pulled the ring off, and he goes, let me see. And I show him the cut on my finger. He goes, oh, yes, I have something just like that. And he holds up his hand and had a huge scar across his entire palm. And he said, that is from a harpoon.
Oh, my gosh.
I guess my finger doesn't look that bad compared to cutting your entire hand open by a harpoon. So.
Oh, my goodness.
So that wasn't, again, not another emergency, but, one of those stories.
Right. Where, thank goodness, it turned out the way it did.
Yeah, exactly. And I still wear my ring. I know I think what Jimmy Fallon got into some trouble with his wedding ring. Right. And you hear about those kind of scary stories, but
exactly,
just try and be careful.
Well, maybe if it was 1910, we could get a little article written about how to be safe on the catamaran.
How to be safe. Yeah.
After you get married.
Handling a catamaran with a wedding ring on.
Yes.
So, cool. Well,
that's fun to hear those stories. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And if our listeners have stories that they come across that they think would be fun to share, they could send us a link or send us a copy of the article too.
Yep. Getaway at thecabincast.com.
Yep. Lots of ways to reach us on our socials, on Instagram and Facebook at the Cabincast. And then Eric just shared the email address. So we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Yeah. It was great catching up.
Yep.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Cabincast. You can find details and more information in the show notes on our website at www.thecabincast.com. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you won't miss a single episode. Follow us on your favorite social media channels. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Cabincast. We'd also love to hear from you. We want to hear your getaway and cabin stories. For a chance to have your story featured on an upcoming episode, email us at getaway@thecabincast.com. Until next week, enjoy the journey.